Good afternoon, distinguished guests, colleagues, students, alumni, ladies and gentlemen. Hello and welcome to today's event celebrating the women in NUS Engineering. My name is Christina Lim and I'm one of these women in engineering. And I'm also going to be your host for this short event. Due to safe management measures, we have a small audience here with us at LT7A in NUS, but I know that there are many more of you who are watching us online. To everyone, wherever you may be, thank you for taking the time to mark with us the contribution and impact of women engineers from NUS. Today's event is one of the ways NUS Engineering is supporting the Year of Celebrating Singapore Women, which the Minister for Social and Family Development, Mr. Masagos Zulkifli, announced to the nation in January. We are honored to have with us 4 of our distinguished alumni who will be sharing with us their journeys as engineers, as well as giving us their perspectives on the questions you get to ask them later. To begin, however, we invite the Dean of NUS Engineering, Professor Aaron Tien, to give his opening remarks. Professor Tien, please.
All right. I guess go to the presenter mode. Okay. So, okay. Sorry. Let me go back one slide. Okay. Welcome and guest of honor, Mr. Masagos Zulkifli, Minister of Social and Family Development, distinguished guests, students, colleagues, and alumni. Good afternoon to you all, and welcome to this inaugural Women in Engineering event at NUS. Actually, I would like to say that we're really honored to have you here, especially for those most accomplished of our alumni to be back here to share some of their experiences. And I really want to welcome you back to campus. We definitely live in a very different time. We live in a time where, if I look out here, we have a few of you sitting out here physically with me, and a whole bunch of you out there virtually listening to this talk. So it's definitely a different time. But 2021 is a special year, I have to say. As highlighted by Christina, our guest of honor, Mr. Masagos, Minister of Social and Family Development, said that this year is declared as the year for celebrating Singapore women. And I think it's easy to highlight that the contribution of women typically and most normally taken for granted. I think this is important that we take an opportunity to highlight this. So today we have definitely examples of accomplished women in the industry who have come back and maybe share some of their experiences and their story, hopefully to inspire. One of the most important things is that to have an opportunity to start a dialogue between the generations. I think this is sometimes we miss this opportunity too much, and especially for our alumni and our students. And hopefully we can then do this to inspire also our alumni, especially women, to actually adopt engineering as a discipline for the career. So I just want to share some numbers, a numbers kind of guy. This is actually from the website, from the ministry itself, that shows full-time university graduates in Singapore. And maybe it's an eye chart, it's hard to pick out the exact numbers, but just to highlight for you is that if you see year to year from 2013 to 2018, the number of male and female graduates are almost on par. In fact, there's slightly more female graduates than male in Singapore. Okay, so and I'm going to share with you something that's not published, and this is actually for engineering. You can see year to year, since 2013 to now, we consistently have a gap of about 40%. So 30% of our graduates are women, 70% is male. Now, I mean, you might think that is normal for engineering field. Obviously, there are more male who are maybe interested in the topic, but I think there's opportunity for improvement. And I think that's where to do that, to improve that, I think starts today. I know this is an inaugural event, and I talked to Daniel and the team that we would like to actually have more of such events, so to bring forth our role models, women who are in engineering, to come back to share their journey through the process and what they have gained from the experience. You don't have to be an engineer. You just have to have gone through an engineering education. I think that's the key. So one of the few things that I'd like to highlight that we are doing in the process, and this is introducing a new curriculum that we rolled out this semester in August. And I think, I'm not going to go into all the gruesome details of what changed, but you can see there are two stack charts that show that we've fundamentally changed the curriculum structure, and effectively what we have done is we allowed students to be more flexible with their curriculum. And this is important because once you've done that, you can then tap into the many, many other disciplines that are non-traditionally engineering. So with this new curriculum, students can build multiple majors, tapping across programs in computing, in design, in humanities. And then this gives us opportunity to allow students to create their own program, starting from being a NUS engineering student, right? So they can tap into 50 plus over different minors and specialization, as well as 35 different second major options. Now I hope that the incoming students are, of course, female students as well as male, to see this as an opportunity to diversify their education while having a core, deep engineering education to start with. So with that, I think I want to end what I wanted to say. The last part is obviously the most important part is the networking. I think it's important that we build a strong network. I know we have not done that too much in the past, but we were going to start doing that more. And it's important because I think with that community, we can then help the next generation. We can then provide opportunities for new ones that join the community itself. So today I want to thank our alumni who are coming back to listen to this. Of course, our guest speakers, and obviously Minister Masago for spending his time with us. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Aaron. We are delighted to have the Minister for Social and Family Development, Mr. Masagos Zulkifli, as our guest of honor. He is joining us virtually, and I suppose we will cue him up very soon. His ministry is not only working hard to improve the lives of women in Singapore, but did you know he is also an alumnus of NUS Engineering? So in 2014, the minister received the NUS Distinguished Engineering Alumni Award in recognition of his long history of significant contributions, especially in public service. So please let us now give our attention to Minister Masagos as he addresses us.
Thank you. Professor Aaron Tien, Dean, NUS Faculty of Engineering, distinguished guests and speakers, students and alumni, good afternoon. I'm honored to join you today for the inaugural Women in NUS Engineering events. It's been more than 25 years since I was a postgraduate student at NUS Engineering. Definitely much has changed, and quite positively, like the gender balance. Back then, no more than 1 in 5 of engineering students were women. Today, about 3 in 10. An encouraging increase, even though there is room for improvements. More importantly, beyond the numbers, it reflects a broader shift within our society, where both women and men are more equally empowered to achieve their potential and career aspirations today, more today than before. A society where women are less likely to be denied opportunities on the basis of their gender or even familial commitments. Singapore's progress in women's development has also been recognized internationally. Last year, the UN Human Development ranked us a respectable 12 out of 162 countries on the Gender Inequality Index. We could have only achieved this because of strong commitment and partnership between the government, private companies, community, and individuals towards advancing Singapore's women's standing. As a nation, we value the importance of respect and partnership between men and women and recognize that it is not about fighting for rights of one group over the other in a zero-sum manner. Notwithstanding the significant strides that Singapore women have made, we believe that more can be done. This was why we embarked on a year-long nationwide conversations on Singapore women's developments last September. We've organized 160 conversations involving more than 5,700 participants from all walks of life who shared their aspirations and ideas with us. These will be consolidated into a white paper to be discussed in Parliament next year. During the conversations, we had received some feedback about gender stereotypes and limited representation of women in fields that are traditionally male-dominated. For example, in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM. This is not an issue unique to us. In fact, an entire session was devoted to discussing this at the G20 Ministerial Conference on Women's Empowerment, which I attended in Italy 2 weeks ago. In Singapore, we are wholly committed to address gender stereotypes and to support our women to pursue careers of their interest, regardless of whether it's perceived to be male-dominated or not. I'll share 3 examples. First, these efforts begins early in our schools, where students are guided and encouraged to explore career sectors based on an understanding of their interests and strengths. It's done in a structured manner through education and career guidance, which is part of the character and citizen education curriculum. Second, through the self-help group SHG initiatives, for example, like the Young Mendaki Club, we encourage those who have succeeded and done well in their careers to come back to contribute their time and talent by sharing their life experiences with students, especially those from less advantaged backgrounds, inspiring them to explore careers of their interest, including STEM-related fields. We too hope that these students can return in future when they have done well, give back in a similar manner, creating a cycle of virtue and giving in our society. I'm glad that NUS Engineering also has a similar initiative through the Alumni Mentorship Program to provide our undergraduates with similar career guidance. Do also consider giving an inspiring career program for our young girls, even in primary schools, to nudge them to stay on STEM and become engineers like you. I'm sure the SHGs will welcome you. Third, the Infocom Media Development Authority, or IMDA, has launched the SG Women in Tech movements to attract, develop, and retain women talent across a diversity of jobs in the Infocom and technology sector. Beyond supporting more women to enroll in STEM courses and to pursue careers in related fields, we also endeavor to promote greater equality, support, and protection of women at home, schools, workplaces, and the community. Finally, like you all already know, we have designated 2021 as the year of celebrating SG Women to celebrate how far Singapore women have come and the achievements in our society. Respect as the cornerstone of the rapport and partnership between women and men. We celebrate their multifaceted roles across society. We also celebrate the men who help to debunk stereotypes, change mindsets, and play an active role in partnering, supporting, and uplifting women. In closing, I'm confident that today's events will provide participants with valuable insights on the lives and career path of women in engineering, inspiring many more women to join the industry. We will also continue to work together as a society to advance Singapore women's development and to build a fairer and more inclusive Singapore for both women and men alike, not only for yourselves, but also for generations after us. Thank you.
Minister is still with us, so thank you, Minister, for those very inspiring words. We are very encouraged to see how the government is taking steps to actively address any equity problems and diversity problems that still exist in our society today. Now, as the Minister said, things have improved over the years, but there is still a long way to go. For example, the live section of the most recent Sunday Times featured a double-page spread of 20 newly minted billionaires who got their billions during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, most made their money not from medicine, as you might expect, but actually through technology. And this would range from medical technology, of course, as well as manufacturing, to areas like artificial intelligence and electronics, even e-commerce. Now, the group featured was quite a diverse one, spanning different ages, ethnicities, nationalities. But that was where the diversity ended. There was not a single woman in that group. So we know that in the past 18 years, the pandemic has accelerated the pace of digitalization, and engineers and innovators are much needed to drive our nation's economic recovery and growth into the future. However, if we were to look at the Sunday Times feature, half of the population, us women, appear to be conspicuously absent from the top of many of these important industries. Our four guest speakers today may not be billionaires, but they stand as role models to other women engineers through their achievements in their respective workplaces. And many of these workplaces are usually dominated by men. For their contributions and impact, each has in the past received the highest recognition that NUS Engineering awards to our alumni. Now we shall hear from them as they share their stories of struggles and triumph as women engineers, so that other women might be empowered to match up to men as tech billionaires in the future. So our first speaker then is well known to most of us. She is Ms. Ho Ching, the Executive Director and CEO of Temasek Holdings. She has been consistently on Forbes' annual list of the world's 100 most powerful women for the past 16 years. Besides her day job at Temasek, she is also a passionate supporter of special needs education and a champion of numerous community causes in Singapore. But many of us might not know that Ms. Ho not only studied engineering, but she also practiced as a successful engineer in industry for a good part of her career. So without further ado, let us give a warm welcome to Ms. Ho as she takes the stage.
Well, I'd like to thank the university, particularly the faculty, for inviting me here, as well as the alumni group. I was asked to talk about why I took up engineering and how I found my university courses. Why take up engineering? Well, that's a very puzzling question for me because it just seemed natural to me. I thought about it for a while and then remembered a toy story that I would like to share with you. Now I've got to figure out how to open this. Does anybody have a guess what this is made from? Well, this is made from a modern mechano set. Can you get this out of the way? Instead of Lego bricks that most parents would know, and some of you may know from your childhood, it's made of all sorts of parts, metal parts, gears, plates, strips of metals, pulleys, wheels, and nuts and bolts. We can mix and match to build different gadgets and toys. Decades ago, and this is more than 50 years ago, The mechano sets start with the beginner set, the number 1 set. And then they go all the way up to the luxury number 10 set. And the number 10 set comes in a big wooden box with drawers and about 1,000 pieces. When I was a kid, I had a neighbor who lived 3rd story up from me, diagonally above my home on the ground floor. He was a toy salesman. Good neighbor to have. And we called him Uncle, of course. One day, Uncle came down and showed my sister and me a whole collection of toys. And what's more, he asked us to choose one each for ourselves. Oh, you can imagine how our eyes popped with delight. My sister chose a baby doll, the kind where they close their eyes when you lay them down flat. Another neighbor in the opposite block began sewing all kinds of clothes for my sister's baby doll, and that set her for life. She grew up wanting to be a teacher, and many of our students end up in engineering and other courses. She got her wish, and she never looked back. She went from being a very passionate teacher and highly dedicated to becoming a deeply caring principal. She eventually became the director of education at the MOE. I took a different path. I chose a mechano set. Not so pretty, no eyes, that close, that blinks with nice eyelashes. But that mechano set was my earliest memory of playing with parts that I could assemble, dismantle, and reassemble into cranes and other toys. You got little pulleys and stuff like that. Perhaps that marked my interest in engineering. I was very fortunate. My parents sent me to a neighborhood primary school, which was just 5 minutes walking distance from my home. After primary school, my parents pretty much left me to decide what I want to do as far as schooling is concerned. They did not press me to take this course or that course or go to this school or that school. For my secondary school, I simply chose a nearby school which shared the main school field with my primary school. And so when it came to university, I took up engineering. How did I find my engineering studies? Well, I enjoyed my university days, but I was also determined to do my daily crossword puzzles, exam or no exam. It was my way of relaxing, of remaining centered through my studies. I was always penciling in time for something else other than academic studies. It was a kind of study-life balance, if you wish to call it that. During university, I had the opportunity to choose some courses which few students wanted to take. One of them, in those days, was a newly emerging field called semiconductor physics. Less than 10 students took that class. Another course was microwave engineering. That was also not very popular because it had a tough lecturer who was very, very strict with his marks. This is where I would like to make a pitch to both our universities and the MOE. Don't drop courses just because there are few students. We should think in terms of how to seed the future, even when students are not quite ready for these new or challenging courses. I would like to make one more point about university studies, or for that matter, any studies in the poly, in the IT, or anywhere else. School is just the start of our life journey. It is a precious time for us to learn. Don't waste it. Be prepared to learn, unlearn, and relearn for life, because textbook knowledge can be obsolete in a few years. For instance, half the knowledge in an electronics textbook will be obsolete very often in 5 years. That's a half-life of 5 years. Even in fields like civil engineering with longer half-lives, we are moving into green cement and other exciting new technologies. This constant innovation is what makes engineering exciting and fun. I don't know how many of our students took up engineering because they felt it was the natural or the fun thing to do, or they took it up because they had no other choice. I want to put in a word for those who wanted to do some other courses and felt engineering was your second or even last choice. For these people, I would say, don't be discouraged. and don't indulge in self-pity just because we didn't get to our dream course or our dream school. Don't let yourself down and don't give up on yourself. We can think of our engineering studies as a way to train our minds to think logically, to hone our discipline, to gather facts systematically, and to sharpen our problem-solving skills. Be inquisitive, be open, be willing to try out new things, push our own boundaries, open new paths, explore new ideas, and connect the dots. Have fun with facts. We just saw some facts and figures. Have fun with figures, with charts, and with data. Even when we are trying to solve a small local problem, think system and think future too. I'm very glad some of the curriculum courses cover things like system engineering and system design. One of the tricks for us, if we are thinking of the future, if we are thinking long-term and not just for today, is to create options for the future and optionalities for others whenever we design or produce things. Second, and more importantly, the future and the fun is in the intersections between the traditional disciplines. In this, I'm very heartened to know that NUS is taking the lead to combine schools to create that nexus between the old disciplines. Suppose your first choice had been medicine, not engineering. Don't fret. Just build a good foundation in the basics of engineering, and then add on courses that allow you to connect to the newer medical fields, like cellular biology, or molecular science, or even AI. This can help you open a path to marry engineering and your interest in medicine. And this applies to the other interests as well. For example, in one pioneer batch of the postgraduate students at the Duke NUS Medical School, the top student was an electronics engineer. Other engineers are working on 3D printing of bones, teeth, or even human organs. Some are helping to design the latest vaccine production, working on fluidics, on materials, and other things. Their engineering training came in handy. So don't give up just because engineering may not be your first choice. Take life as it comes and try to do the best you can wherever you are. And don't carry a chip on your shoulder. Whether it is a missed promotion or some other perceived slights or insecurities, don't let them fester. Don't let these become your own self-imposed handicaps. Learn to let go of such emotional baggage. Let go to grow. Let go so that you can be free to grow and be free to be happier. Learn also to let go preconceived ideas or pet peeves. Sometimes we need to unlearn before we can learn new concepts or new skills. This also helps to keep our brains young when we constantly learn and unlearn and relearn for the future. When we take on our first job, we need to give it our best shot. If it's not your cup of tea, move on to something else. There's no wrong decision in terms of jobs or career choices. There are only choices. However mundane or boring it may seem, each job is an opportunity to learn and add to your own experience. Eventually, these experiences will help you move on or even invent new things that don't exist today in jobs that you can't imagine today. And what underpins such innovation? It is the rich mix of engineering disciplines plus other non-engineering disciplines and the knowledge and experiences we've gained along the way. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions and chat further during the Q&A later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ho. Is Ms. Ka Ping, who is the chairman of Shell Companies in Singapore, and she is also the Asia-Pacific focal for chemical sustainability in Shell. Ms. received a training at NUS Engineering, and before joining Shell, she had spent many years in Singapore's public service with a range of technical and leaderships in the Singapore Economic Development Board, or EDB, as well as being the CEO and board director of Singapore Tourism Board. On the tourism front, Ms. was instrumental in bringing to Singapore several key projects familiar to most of us, such as the Marina Bay Sands, Resorts World Sentosa, and the F1 night race. At EDB, she was involved in developing two of the largest multi-billion petrochemical complexes by ExxonMobil and Shell on Jurong Island. So while Ms. Au might not be a tech billionaire herself, she has certainly played a key role in attracting billions of dollars of investment into Singapore. So Ms. Au has remained a valuable alumna of the NUS community, being a regular volunteer and speaker at numerous events across the university. Once again, we are pleased to have Ms. Au among us today to share her experiences.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. You know, I have to start with a confession. So I was at NUS Engineering, 30 plus years ago. So you can now date me. But the confession is I never actually picked engineering at any point. So it all started because when I was still trying to decide what I wanted to study in school, my late father said, look, if you choose something serious, yeah, I will buy you a new piano. And that was a fantastic offer. I said, okay, anything serious, right? He said yes. And that was very straightforward for me. Straight away, I said, what can I study? Okay, engineering is good. I think I can get in. So I never really chose engineering, and that's my first confession. Second confession. I've got a few today to get through. Second confession. When I was in my second year in NUS Engineering, I was asked to participate in the making of a video to promote engineering to girls, because we wanted to increase, or NUS at that time wanted to increase female representation in the engineering school. And then I said, well, what's in it for me, man? So they said, oh, don't worry, you get to skip one class because we got to film the video during that period of time. And I said, oh, fantastic. What a great thing to do. So I agreed. And then I realized, of course, I mean, I had 7 girls in my class that year, the cohort, which means what, 12%? Yeah, in my cohort that year. So they didn't have that many choices. I kind of said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So Aaron, Dean, you know, to have gone from 12% to 30% in about 30 years, I think you've done a very credible job. There's more to do, clearly, to get to your 50-50 split. But hey, don't give up, yeah? So indeed, I wasn't sure how I would ever contribute to being able to attract more females into engineering just by making a video, but hopefully it's done something. So second confession. Third confession, I never actually worked as an engineer for a single day. I did do some work in the lab. So I started work in the lab after I graduated. And I thought it was quite interesting to apply some of my technical know-how, but I was working with computer graphics and so on. Whether you call that serious, hardcore engineering, I don't know. But that didn't last very long. 3.5 months later, I found myself in public service, in EDB, and then, you know, the rest I will tell you later as part of my story. So the third confession is I never actually did hardcore engineering work, even though I had an engineering degree. So those are my 3 confessions for today. But what I've found is, you know, that it really doesn't matter what you do after you graduate, as long as it is what drives your passion and your interest. And for me, that was always around, you know, what's that sense of mission, you know, that I'm looking for. And it came very early on when I was working in public service in EDB. The sense of purpose was around how do we create jobs for Singapore? And then at that time, you know, it quickly evolved into how do we create not just jobs, but good jobs? And that was important. So I got involved in projects like Jurong Island, and you can see the outcome of that today. Many other industries, biopharmaceutical, education, all kinds of industries. But I think that mission of creating good jobs, for me at that point, was hugely inspiring. And, you know, I would have worked day and night just to be part of that. And of course, then you get kind of thrown into different areas, and I was then asked to move over to the tourism board, which of course I knew very little about, but they say, oh, don't worry, you know, you'll figure things out. And it was about also building industries, creating good jobs for Singapore as well. So it really didn't move very far from that mission-driven orientation that got me moving, got me out of bed every day. And then came the point that I said, look, after 22 years, I've had so much opportunity, so much exposure to new things and amazing thinking in the public service. What else would I want to do with my life, right? And at that point, I said, I think it's time to figure out what's outside the public service. How do industries really work, but from the inside, not from the outside? And so I said, this is time. So I left the public service, and I kind of bumped around for about 6 months, trying to figure it out. And then started talking to a couple of companies, so on and so forth. And before long, I found myself in Shell 6 months later. And Shell, for me, was a very interesting choice. Yes, chemical engineering, so I kind of understand processes, what they mean, the chemical bonds, what's carbon. I get all that. I had the Jurong Island thing at the back of my head. I said, wow, interesting, good fit. But the thing that clinched it for me and why Shell were two things. One, Shell is invested in Singapore. Shell has been here for 130 years. I don't think it's going away. I will make sure that it does not disappear. But it has a commitment to the country that in some ways has a depth and breadth that very few companies in Singapore would have, yeah? Just by virtue of how it has developed over the years. So I said, that must mean something, and I have to figure out a way to be a part of that. And then the second thing was really the culture of the company, how it values diversity, inclusion, everybody needs to have a voice, all of the respect, care for people, and so on and so forth. And for me, that really mattered a lot. So two simple things ended up in Shell. 9 years later, this is what I'm doing. So my current job today, every single day I think about energy transition, how we would take the huge footprint that we have in Singapore, we are in every part of the energy value chain, how we would take that and transform it, not just to decarbonize, but to transform the products that we make, what we start from. If it's not fossil, it has to be something more sustainable, how to make it more circular, how to get it in front of our customers, you know, how do we help sectors transform and not just transform ourselves. So it's a whole host of things that actually in many ways come back to the diversity of the experiences that I've had and the foundation that engineering gave me. So that, to me, is what gets me out of bed every single day. And then I'll come back to, you know, what have I observed, and how do female engineers or female professionals, if I broaden that, play a role in that. I'm fortunate to work in Shell. So today in Singapore, we've got 3,500 people, excluding our contractors, you know. And we're about 30% female. So it is a male-dominated industry, even today. At the senior level, it's actually 35% female. So we're doing slightly better there, right? And we have a clear path to say we want to increase that diversity. It's not just gender, it's all manner of diversity. And you see even at our board today, it's split half-half, 50% female, 50% male. So I think we're making strides in different places, and making progress on that front. But my takeaway is there are things that female leaders and female professionals are naturally quite good at, you know. We listen better, we collaborate better, we kind of want to get people together more often. So, you know, and that helps us to think and spark off creativity. So there are things that I think I've observed that females do better in. We should not be shy to say that's what we bring to the table. We want to help not just ourselves succeed, but help the team succeed. So I do think that in many ways, being female, being in engineering, being in a profession that is still predominantly male, actually should not stop us. It should be a great opportunity to do more and hopefully get more people to join our ranks. And on that last point, I do think that each of us can do more to create opportunities for people around us and perhaps to help them overcome some of their concerns about whether it's a, you know, how do you succeed? How do you get there? So how to help them overcome some of these hurdles. So that's my sharing. Happy to, you know, take many questions, particularly around my confessions, but, you know, thank you for inviting me to be part of this very exciting initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. for the very honest sharing that you have given us, and also for the encouragement you have given all our audience. Next, we have Ms. Wan Siu Ping, who is a senior consultant at the Singapore Institute of Manufacturing Technology, or SIMTech in short. SIMTech is a research institute under A*STAR, and Ms. Wan has extensive experience in industry, and she started her career in electronics, and she has moved through many different roles and industries to manufacturing, automation, and design. Ms. Wan is passionate about empowering women in engineering education and engineering careers, and she is a mentor and frequent speaker at outreach events, especially those aimed at young adults. Ms. Wan has generously shared of her finances and time with NUS, and we are so glad to be able to hear from her again this afternoon. So let us now invite Ms. Wan to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, NUS Engineering, for inviting me to share my experience about how and what happened and how did I get into this engineering thing. For my organizers has asked me to brief to some questions, which I think are good questions, and I think I should give some points with that question is why I embarked on engineering. So this is a big question, just like the previous speakers. I think this is something, especially I would like to highlight is that actually engineering, to a lot of young people when I was young, I do not know what is it. Similarly, my parents don't know what is it. And the best part is my family actually is the historical generations are technical people from pre-war times. So actually my grandparents, or my grandfather in particular, has given instruction that, you know, ladies cannot come into our work scope, okay? Because he is an expert mold maker, he's an expert machine shops they have, and all that before the war. So first statement, you go to school, you study what you need to study, but cannot come into our work scope. So that's the first ground rules in the house, okay? So, but then, when we come to study, and I was actually planned to go into a Chinese primary school then, way back in the 60s or 70s. But somehow, just like currently what a lot of parents is doing, they queue up and they didn't get the slot. So I went into an English school, English education, but I failed badly. So I never expect myself to get a university education because I almost dropped out of primary school because of English. And thanks to the MOE teachers and their systems, so actually I was pushed to go to secondary school. And, but then my parents objected because it was too far away from my house. So my parents said, no, you cannot go to that special school, you must stay in a neighborhood school. But MOE and my primary school teachers, two of them, objected and actually came to my house and speak to my parents, and I was landed in a secondary school where it was very challenging. I was competing with all the very, very smart people there and with a very poor English score. So again, I almost failed my English and couldn't get to JC. But luckily, during that time, I have a slot and I went to apply and I got it. But my family is saying, why should you study? As a lady, you should, and especially the family is not well-to-do, you should go and start work. So I went to look for jobs, but I couldn't land any at that time. So I went to JC, but before that, there was a plan to go to Polytechnic. The Singapore Poly was very famous then, because if going Poly, probably I can land a job in a factory or something. But turned out that my family couldn't afford the school fees for Singapore Polytechnic. So because JC is cheaper, lower cost, so I went to JC. Reason is because I couldn't find a job. If I landed a job at that moment, I would have left the schooling system totally. So from there, I went to JC. Again, I didn't do well in English. So never plan to go to university. But again, somehow, I got a chance to apply, and NUS accepted me. Engineering accepted me. But on one condition, I must go and take extra lesson. I must pass the special test before you can enter. So lucky for me, I managed to enter. But again, why engineering? Firstly, because I'm bad in English, so I couldn't take any other courses in the arts, so left with science. But science to me is pretty boring, because in science, in school, we already know what we learned. That kind of subjects don't attract me. But engineering is a big question mark. And luckily, my family do not know what is engineering actually. And so, because they are not English educated in that sense, so I landed picking engineering because I was given a school place I went in. So I also agree with the other speakers. Sometimes it's just that, you got an opportunity, go and make a try. And because that probably is, to me, I couldn't do well in English, I couldn't do the other subjects, and why not try this? Okay, that's how I landed in engineering. Not on purpose, not because I think engineering will get me a technical job, totally not that, but rather I do well in those subjects. In secondary school, we have technical class. In JC, we have technical class. So I think because I do well in those subjects, that's why I was offered a place in NUS Engineering. If not, I guess I have nowhere to go, okay? So I hope I answered this question. The other one is, I have very fond memories of NUS because I somehow got into this place and very happy, and when I came here, then I realized NUS, that time there was SU, so I realized it's not that school over there in Bukit Timah, but rather a new place in Cambridge, and it was so new. In fact, the first time when the semester started, a group of us went to visit the NUS library, and we were also shocked. The library was totally empty except with shelf of books, and there's no tables and chairs. That's where we were talking to each other. When we go to class, will we have table and chairs? that was an interesting, a very impactful, I mean, learning about NUS, the first few time we came here. Then the other thing interesting about NUS is the queue at the computer center then. As an engineering student, we take up computer classes, but we don't know what is inside the computer center. We just have to queue up to get our programs done, put in a stack of cards and bring out a stack of cards. So that was interesting things that, you know, we find a student, we roam around the campus. Is something we do, but we don't know what is happening inside, except, you know, listen from lecturers. And my biggest problem when I come to NUS is, besides all these new things, is so interesting to discover, is I have one big problem is, every semester I have to worry for my own school fees. Because as I mentioned, my family is not well-to-do, and I have to pay for my own school fees, actually. So the first few years I have, you know, before the first semester to enter, I have my savings from my part-time job in secondary and JC time. And when I enter NUS, every semester is a big worry, because while I'm schooling, 50% of my time is always doing tuition or doing some part-time job. So that was my biggest problem in NUS program, especially during our time, we have first year and second year totally open. All the students attend all the courses, and I think that is a very good thing for most of us, even till now, as our cohort of friends. We actually are open up to all the discipline of engineering. You don't focus in any, but by the time of third year, you know which area you are better at, and then you can zoom in to pick your discipline, whether you want the electronics or the mechanical or the civil engineering, okay? So for me, because I think mechanical probably is a wider diversity, and I don't do so well in the electronics subjects, so I landed in mechanical division or department. But then, again, at that time, we only have 5 girls upon 100 students. And the total cohort is 30 over girls, over 300 students. And I graduated with a very interesting project, not really engineering at that time, okay, but on the programming, okay? And I can, actually I show here, I don't know if you see, yes, the few professors that have this idea of doing this thing, which is none of my classmates understand what is this project about. And I'm a bit slow because I was busy with part-time job, and I didn't manage to, you know, get my so-called choose a good final year end project. So this is one of those 3 projects that's left behind. And I say, why not try it? Since I'm bad in English, right? So I think I can do something with Chinese as well. So that's the reason how I got this project. And it's an interesting project. Something came out and we can play with it, okay? So from here, I would say that actually, if you are students who join engineering, it's good to be open, and eventually you really don't know which engineering you like more or you are doing better, you just go into that. And at the same time, things like this, final year end project is, you cannot imagine what it will land you in, what kind of jobs. But then, it's an eye-opener for me that as an engineering student, we can do such things. It's really a seed to what I'm doing down the road in my job, okay? I didn't realize that, but it was such an interesting project, okay? So after I graduate, because of this project, I couldn't find any matching jobs. Like a lot of students, you know, with your year-end project, you can, you know, talk to your future employer, and they might say, oh, you're doing this thing, maybe it matches. So it couldn't, it's so different, right? So I just go around, and I need a job because my family really need me to start working. I'm the eldest. I have 4 other siblings coming to university soon, and one already in. So I really need a job. So I say, be it any job, just take, okay? And the first job I got was process engineering. Then I asked myself, I'm a mechanical engineer. In fact, I talked to HR during interview, what is the match? Then the person say, you will come in, then you know. Because it's hard to explain, okay? So that's how this thing happened is, I think as a graduate, you can go into any job because in the school, they will never be able to map it because these are future industry and future jobs. And that's how after that, I know it's called semiconductor industry, which is never open. You know, when we study, we thought mechanical and all that. Oh, this is an industry, okay, then we go in. So from there, because of my final year project that sit me with design thinking, so actually, or rather a group of us, a group of friends in the same company, we went to do what we call automation design. Because we suffer a lot, especially me as a young process engineer, how to accumulate or how to control the quality of process outcome. So we started to think manually doing something doesn't give good quality in long term. So we do equipment. So that's how we get to be a startup. And this is where I think very exciting nowadays to see a lot of young people going to be a startup. At that time, for a startup like this to happen, is like nobody recognized. All my cohort of classmates asked, Siu Ping, what are you doing? Cannot explain, because I'm not working for Shell, I'm not working for government, I'm not working for MINDEF, because a big cohort went to MINDEF, you know, a big cohort went to PUB. So I couldn't explain it, okay? So now I think after so many years, they get to know what is semiconductor industry. And we did start up, and then at the moment, at that time, nobody recognized, especially ladies, okay, able to work on machines. And in semiconductor industry, because it's very advanced and ahead, okay, even then, when we sell machines to the US, to the different part of the world, they were surprised. One of my US customers asked my boss, wow, I come and visit your company, how come I see all ladies? Okay? Because at that time, we are doing design, and 50% of our designers are ladies. It turned out that way probably because when, at that moment in the 80s and 90s, there are lots of jobs in oil and gas and everywhere, in civil engineering, where all the guys probably go there for those more exciting jobs to them. Okay? So we actually had a lot of ladies. And when we traveled the world, actually I realized engineering for ladies depends on which part you do. There are many areas in engineering that our gentlemen engineers cannot do it because of they like to be outdoors, they like to be running around. So there's a difference in skill set and different in people's, what you like to do. So I think to be in engineering, you need people with passion. You also need people with understanding of the different roles in engineering. There are many roles in engineering. So these are just some examples of what we have done. And from there, I was invited to join A-Star. And also why? Because seeing so much problems in the new industries, we have a lot of science to be input into it. Scientific discovery is very important to help us progress. So that's how, we have been, in our industry, we appreciate such research and people doing such research work. So I was actually invited to join A-Star to see how to bridge technologies developed in the labs into the industry, and how to bring the industry problems back to the lab, so that we get new things coming up to solve industry problem, which is the money making, or which is the important solutions to meet the demands from every part of the world. Okay, so I would say, feel free to do engineering, and it would be good that an engineering program, like in the past in the US, fundamentals were strongly emphasized, but at the same time, some seed different types of subjects or different type of projects can make certain, even like what Ms. Ho has mentioned, subjects that are like very niche, very special, these are something that we should allow the students to know. Okay, we should allow them to know. Maybe we go out in the industry, that is the next 10 years of the new industry somewhere. So as long as there's a subject or there's something in engineering that is important, I think, and there is some technology there, even you have 10 students, it's worth to, it's worth to let them have it. At least you seed them, okay? So basically, I think I learned a lot from basic manufacturing processes that was taught in the old program here. And also, at the last year, we have some automation, some operation research, some statistics. Actually, statistics helped me a lot in my job, even in the first job as a process engineer, because we use that to measure and measure the trend of the quality, drop of quality improvement. So all these are fundamentals that, it will help the graduates to go out into many different fields, not just design engineering and such. So I would say, as an engineer, especially as a lady engineer working in, I would whether label is hardcore engineering, but really engineering, then there are a lot of social issues, okay, at that time, in the 80s and 90s. When I travel, the immigration has got a lot of questions to ask you. Are you sure you're an engineer? First question. Where are you going to? And please prove that who is your customer. Okay, I got one case because it's Malaysia, so I bring a toolbox along. And then they have to check my whole toolbox, why you have these tools here, why you have this, and why you have that. I have to explain every single item in the toolbox to the immigration officer in a special room, that they check you out, why are you carrying things like this around. So I think being a woman engineer, these are some of the things that in the past, but I think it's not going to happen much more now, that I think our ladies engineers nowadays should be much more easier to travel. And also traveling in the past is very problematic with the family because they don't know where you go and you don't have handphone, right? You don't have internet. And so once you're out on the plane, the whole family don't know where you are. They tend to worry and there are a lot of question marks. When are you coming back and when the plane got delayed. So all these are the other issues as a woman engineer at that time. But I think all this is over. So everybody is on handphone now. You are free to do a lot more things. Okay, so I do encourage ladies, if you don't know what else you want to do, going into engineering is something very open, a lot of things to explore. And in the future, actually engineering is not only for ladies, but I think everybody in the future must somehow have to learn something in engineering, because the future world, our future environment, a lot of things we touch has got engineering fundamental content inside. So whether you are a man or woman, you must learn certain level of engineering in order to feel very comfortable in this world. That's what I think. So I think engineering will concern everybody in our life, and hope that we will know more, everybody know more, don't feel scared or whatever to come into engineering, but have to come in and see how you can play in this big world about engineering. Okay, that's all I have to say. Welcome questions later. Thank you.
Has improved over the years. So our final speaker for the session is Ms. Ying Se Xian, who is Senior Vice President of Business Development at Skylab Services, which is a startup that helps businesses digitalize and harness the power of IoT, or the Internet of Things. In her previous roles at Singtel and Vodafone, Ms. Ng has lived and worked in several countries, often visiting business partners and her teams around the world while being a mother to 2 children. Ms. Ng now brings her global experience home to Singapore, helping local and regional businesses with their digital transformation and securing the economic future of Singapore. So let us now hear from Ms. Ng.
Good afternoon, everybody. Minister, Dean, Vice Dean, distinguished guests, and fellow speakers, alumni, and students. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today. I think we are overrunning a little bit on the schedule, so I'll try my best to be brief. I know anyone who's in a lecture theatre can't wait to get out. There's more fun stuff waiting for us outside. So I thought, oops, sorry, I think I need to go back. There you go, okay. So I thought today I would kind of theme, my message around how I think engineering is really a family business. And last week, okay, thank you. Sorry, the slides here were jumping. They're aligned now, thank you. So last week, I watched this show called Baby Boss, right? And it's the sequel. It's a really fun show. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. Go and catch it if you haven't done so. I was really actually interested to understand that the lead was a little female baby, bossing all these male baby bosses from the first episode, right? So I'm going to use some of the themes from the movie without telling you what the story is about throughout my speech. You see my profile here, and after NUS, I worked in Singtel, I worked in Vodafone, and now I'm with a startup. So we'll talk more about that as my speech progresses. Let me try this. Okay, so there are 3 parts to the talk today. At school, these are some of the keywords, right? So why engineering? I think the type of excitement children have today when they get their first smartphone is equivalent to the type of excitement people in my generation had when we got our first personal computer. So for us, it was the PC, right? That was like amazing. So when I got my first PC at 13, a second-hand one, I somehow just stumbled upon coding and I thought, oh, this is amazing. I have this little computer that can do whatever I tell it to do. And I remember spending almost all of my school holidays borrowing books on different languages from the library, kind of self-teaching myself, right, what the latest languages were. And when it came to time to actually choose my major, I thought, wait, hang on. So if I'm going to have babies one day, how am I ever going to have time to catch up on the next coding language? I could have missed out 2 coding languages by the time I have a baby. So honestly, and that was my thought, why I had such a stereotypical thought. I look at myself now in shame. I am not saying girls cannot be coders, okay? But definitely I looked for something in my head that represented a more broad-based, a more integrated approach, and I stumbled into the Faculty of Engineering. Even then, in engineering, I think I looked out for everything to do with software and hardware, right? In my coding days, I was very fortunate to be have experience with the International Olympiad Informatics prep team, so I was already exposed to the School of Computing from young. But I found that engineering really gave us the other side of the approach. So there's software, there's hardware, and really how you bring the system together. So one of my friends from engineering back then heard I was doing this talk and said, hey, remember that year 2 amplifier project? You really have to put a picture of the resistor there, okay? That's what differentiates engineering from coding. I was very fortunate to be selected for the French double degree program and spend year 3 and year 4 in France. At the same time, I think what taught me throughout university was really that it was broad-based. how do you solve problems that you're going to encounter again and again through life, and what do you do as you face those challenges, all right? So I'm going to talk about that as I talk about how I joined Singtel, how I participated in the launch of 3G, and how I encountered failure, all right? So at work, after having gone through, I think, what was quite an interesting university experience, both here and in France, and also encountering failure for the first time during my university education, I remember telling my mother my grades for my first exam in France, and she said, "What are you going to do about that?" And I said, "Actually, what I'm going to have to do is to go skiing, because if I play hard with the locals, they're actually going to teach me how to pass this exam at the end of the day." So my message to all of you still in university is really to learn how to play hard, because after that, it's really all work, and you want to be able to pass on that joy of learning and having fun while learning as well. So I go into work in Singtel and I say, okay, I'm going to volunteer, right, for overseas opportunities, because I really liked what I saw overseas. I liked the fact I was able to learn and come back and maybe contribute what I had learned overseas. I was pretty surprised that when I put my head up for certain stints, I was told, "Oh, that's not a good country for a girl." And I said, "Oh, that's really strange. Why do you say that?" So I found myself having to, I guess, justify some of these conversations and thinking of innovative ways, because you kind of are really just fighting for yourself, and you really want to be judged on your merits, right? So I think I would encourage some of you to really think about that. What do you really want? And are you prepared for sometimes that maybe, wall of disbelief or criticism when you make some non-traditional choices? My justification was that I had known my then boyfriend for a good 9 years, since junior college, and I was pretty sure he was going to propose. So I said, I think I would like a chance to kind of just, travel before we start to have a family together. And I remember being passed over for a trip for an overseas stint in Bangladesh, despite having done the due diligence for that acquisition. And when, both culturally and work-wise, I was offered Philippines, I jumped at the chance. Again, there were doubts because my bosses had received my wedding invitation. And they said, "Are you sure your fiancé is going to be okay with this?" And I said, "You are going to have to ask him at the wedding. But until then, please make the decision solely on the merit of what it's going to take to do well at this job." So the long and short of it was I did leave 3 months after my wedding to live in Manila for a year. My husband had his own work here and visited me from time to time. And I think it was really just the education, that allowed me to just dare to try new things. So since then, I've been fortunate enough to also be in the Middle East, in Pakistan, and we've recently come back as a family after 2 years in London. So what I'm showing here is really, fortunately or unfortunately, at least for me, it has also been about family approval. It's also been about problem solving as a family, right? And just being prepared to, face some of these concerns, but just not be daunted just because there are stereotypes of what your role and your time in certain times of your life should be. So work-life balance, right? I was asked to share some interesting stories, okay, at the workplace and home. So I remember having conference calls while I was breastfeeding, not recommended. I remember visiting countries for work and being told that there are no ladies' toilets on the first floor because not enough women work here. I think at the end of the day, a project management methodology that my boss and I kind of thought about called game planning has really been this guiding light in my life. So one day when I was really like a young, project engineer, very tired by the corporate life, very tired by the fact that there were so many things in our project that were going wrong that were not related to the technical aspects of the project, but really related more to the human and political part of the project. He said, why don't you come up with scenario planning and draw all possible scenarios that could go right and wrong, given that you now understand all the characters and companies and clients involved in this project. So we did that. The project, ended successfully. And then, over a couple of beers one day, we said, actually, why don't we apply this to life? So I shared this with my husband, and actually, I chart my life, our life, on a flow chart every 5 years or so. So we update it every now and then when there is a major milestone. Say we have a new baby, there's an unfortunate, death in the family, right? And we try to follow this methodology called if then else, right? So if then, it's all great, idealistic life happens, you're on top of the world, but guess what? Life's not always a bed of roses. What happens then? So I guess one of the tips I would like to share with women in engineering or STEM careers today is, how do you minimize that detour? How do you minimize that detour to come back to your ideal person, your ideal life, when something hits you, when there is a life event that you didn't expect? One kind of methodology that we adopted was to try not to plan major transitions in work, in education. Say, for example, if I wanted to further my studies or move to another country when we knew in advance something else was happening to somebody else in the family that year, right? For example, if my younger brother was going to graduate, I wasn't going to plan something huge because I might be preoccupied with how do I bring my mother to his graduation that year or something like that. Of course, me time, I've recently taken up leisure badminton and netball again. I've also started to learn the piano after coming back from London. So I think all little things that you do for yourself, on top of being a mother, a coach, a teacher, a colleague, a boss, are all very important. Finally, I'd like to just encourage all the ladies and all the men with ladies in your life, to dream big, right? Dream big, but take small steps. If you don't dream big, you might end up looking back one day and thinking, what if? But at the same time, as you go on that journey with this wonderful base that engineering has provided you, think about bringing others along, and please think about evolving your support base. I think women need sponsors all throughout their journey, so do men, right? But please think about networking beyond your community, your immediate community. Think about old professors that might be interested to give you a hand. Think about your old bosses, and think about going out there, making time to meet new people that can bring you new discoveries for future careers. And most importantly, I'd like to encourage all of you to give back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ng. So we have come to the end of the first segment of our event, but this is not the end. There is an exciting forum with our speakers still to come. For those of you who are watching online, our speakers will be back live with us at 5:35 to take questions, which you can submit through the Q&A function in Zoom during our brief break. So do come back then, and we shall see you again shortly. Okay, welcome back to the second segment of the Women in NUS Engineering event. Now, earlier you heard the experiences of our 4 distinguished speakers, and now they will try to address some of the questions that you have sent us. So bear with me as I pull up the questions that you have sent. So it's just going to be a general question. Anybody can go ahead and answer, but I think a general question is, as a woman in engineering who has practiced engineering or in engineering related fields, what do you think are some of the major challenges that either you have faced or you have seen in your workplace? Major challenges that women face in engineering professions.
I suppose the problem is less nowadays because you have got 30% female students, right? So the next generation, you will get more females. But in the early generation, you're often the single woman in the class or the single woman in the project or something like that. So yeah, you've got to learn to look for toilets yourself. You've got to be a bit thick-skinned. You've got to also learn to be, in some ways, self-confident and self-sufficient, to be the one among the many. But other than that, I don't see it as very different from being a guy in engineering.
Yeah, so what I've observed in our company is applies to females in general, not just females in engineering jobs. And which is, usually at the recruitment level, we see about equal numbers of female graduates, including in engineering fields, joining us. And in fact, we put them out in the field. So they work in our plants, they're just alongside any other engineers. So the starting point is pretty even. Then, 8, 10 years along the line, and sometimes can be earlier or later, there is a particular job grade that we've observed that suddenly, women make other life choices. So this is where they say, time to get married, or maybe I have my first kid, I want to take time out, help them with school. And so then they make a life choice, and we see challenges with them coming back and being put back on that path. So, and we've seen that quite consistently in quite a few places. So I think, trying to figure out ways in which we can support them. So, for example, in our shell office, we've got, rooms for mothers, we give them flexible work hours. And this is way before COVID, We basically tell people, if you need to go work from home, go ahead, go home, do what you need to do. So that flexibility really helps a lot. And then being really deliberate that when they do come back, at some points in their career, they need a bit more support than normal. And we have to kind of look out for that. So, because otherwise we see the numbers dropping off as they climb. So yeah, just an illustration.
I think that's a very important observation, especially for our younger students and maybe young alumni who are just starting out in their career, because, as you said, at some stage they want to have children, and and of course the next generation is important. Singapore needs more babies. So, do you see that kind of support for women who are mothers? As you have said, Ms. Au, you have said that the company needs to give more support. Do you see that common across industry, whether it's engineering industry or just workplaces in general? Or do you think we need a lot more of that? Do we need to even legislate that?
I think it's just about being mindful, and part of what was touched on earlier by the various speakers is just to be really upfront with your needs, right? So yes, we can say most women may one day like to start a family, but it's really up to you to say when and how and with who, right? So I think communicating that in advance and then seeking advice from your seniors on what type of accommodations maybe they wish they had, be it flexi work or specific to your job because you love your job so much, you would like not to give it up when you start to think about those life transitions, can be important conversations. And I mean, for me personally, I've tended, I guess, to plan those conversations after major milestones in work as well. So, if I'm going out to get another degree, or I'm going out to get myself certified in CCNA, Cisco network, I think I'm doing that for the benefit of the company. And I think the company would like to see me putting that to good use instead of giving up on that track and choosing another career. So just being very, forward with that conversation, I think is important. I would like to add that other than flexi work arrangements, which is often discussed when it comes to female and work, another quality that my bosses have taught me over the years is something called gravitas. And females, tend to maybe want to seek consensus, find it difficult to assert themselves and have their voice heard when they're in the room. We may like to be called on because it, maybe seems a little bit more modest and humble, and we let those who have something to say go first, and we add a little bit of value, right, at the end or in the middle of a discussion, but maybe not the first. So when one of my bosses promoted me in Vodafone, and I think we talked a bit about special needs earlier, just to be inclusive, I later found out he was dyslexic and had huge empathy for other beings' emotions. He said, it's not going to be about this level, Sasian, but getting to the next level is going to require you to have enough charisma to turn the room around when you walk into that room. And we're going to develop you professionally in that area so that when you get to that stage where you want to be considered, you're not going to have to feel afraid or encumbered by that thought of having to address such a large amount of people or having to work around that. So I think not just on the work and flexi work, but also on how to, command yourself and command presence when you're leading large teams is increasingly important in these times of remote and global leadership.
Now, any Xu Ping, Ms. Wan?
Maybe just want to add on regarding what Ms. Ho has mentioned also. As a lady or a woman in engineering, like in the past, we are like 1 or 3 in hundreds. So in our working space in the 80s and 90s is the same. It's like, especially, I would like to comment that in Singapore, actually, I do not feel the difference at all between whether I'm a lady or not in my work scope. Okay, why? Maybe in particular, I went into semiconductor industry, and the first factory that I went into was, you have 3,000 over operators, technicians, and engineers, and management, and you practically have almost 90% of the workers, which are the operators, are all ladies, not on purpose, but through recruitment. The guys who came in for the same job, they give up after 3 months, most of them. Why? Because in semiconductor work that we do, everything is so small. Practically, you have to look through a microscope, and you have to handle very small wires for wire bonding. You have to handle very fragile items. And it's just that most of the gentlemen could not do a happy job or comfortable with doing that kind of job, 24 or 8 hours a day for 3 shifts, that kind of work. So naturally, the attrition, we have 80% of ladies in the workforce. With management, we also have ladies, 50% or so, doing different areas of work. And if you look at it, because of that, we do not really feel very awkward in a factory. We feel very happy to be around. We have more ladies' toilet than guys. So it's a different industry environment. Then when it comes to my own startup, we were actually coming from that sector, so we also do not feel anything. But the moment we start selling overseas, and I go to all my overseas customer meetings, business discussion on the projects and stuff like that, then you'll find that it's totally different. I'm very happy that in Singapore, even the local customer, the ASEAN customers, even they are all guys, they are still very acceptable to have ladies in the technical area, in the management area. Whereas when I went to US, it's totally different. And as a lady, I have to handle one very important thing is that I have to be very confident. Because the US guys, whether the managers, the boss, the customer, will question, how come you're the only lady in the whole room for the meeting? They shoot you questions that, why I cannot be? So they actually don't expect, and I would say they discriminate, but they really don't expect. They throw you all kind of questions that, how come I have a lady person representing this company, doing this kind of work, and giving me the answers and giving me all the reports? So I think, I do not know now, because the last 10 years, I don't travel to US anymore. So I think over even the 80s and 90s, it's really very different in Europe in US in terms of ladies and men relationship in the workplace. So I would say, ladies in Singapore, we are very lucky. Our gentlemen here do appreciate us and can accept us into the workplace, especially engineering, that I can see around. So I would say, feel free to really perform your best in whatever you can do in engineering. Nothing to stop you, okay? So this is one point. The other point on support, yes. Especially ladies, especially all my friends who have young children at that period, I think they need a lot of support. And I can see that even my own siblings, everybody have to chip in to help support when there's young children around in the family. So in my own company, we do have special, arrangements with our ladies, engineers and staff when they need it. So it's important that you have to speak up to your bosses, to ask for it, to discuss how to solve your problem as well, because the company doesn't want to lose you also, on the other hand. So I think both parties have to work out. It's not a fixed rule, and I don't think legislation can help much. I think important is the relationship between the bosses and the staff, how to work out a good solution so that everything can work out.
Right, thank you for such interesting
Maybe I
responses.
just add 2
Anything else, Ms.
points?
Ho? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to share 2 points. The first is life is about trade-offs. It's not about you can have everything. We must accept that. So when you have kids, if you think that your priority is kids, by all means, put that as your priority. And know that if you want to have a career subsequently, the re-entry needs a special effort, and you cannot go and enter as if you have never left the place. Because if you have left the workplace for 5 years, the technology would have moved. The people would have moved, the capabilities would have moved. And you would have to start practically from ground up to go up the ladder again. So life is about trade-off, accept it. Accept that you can also do negotiations, example. So for me, I had a special child, so I decided to take half-time off. And I can tell you half-time off doesn't work very well, because you're paid half pay, but you end up doing 3/4 or 80% of the work, okay? But I did that for 2 years because during that period, that kid was important. So I think every one of us have to make that judgment for ourselves and accept that life is about trade-off. Right? So even if you say my career gets a bit, I get paid less or whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's your own trade-off that you must be comfortable with. And in an organization where you can have that understanding. The second thing is you're bound to meet all kinds of funny people along the way. So as an example, I started life in MINDEF. And MINDEF decided to have flexi hours. And being an early bird, I decided that I will take the early hours so that I can knock off at 4:30 and go and do something else. But I had a boss that would insist on holding his meeting at 4:30. Right? So do you go and protest and cry and so forth? No, you go for that meeting, you do whatever it is, and after a while he gave up. But one of the important things is this. As we go along, we are going to meet many of these things. Do we take these as lessons to remember and say, we shall not do this to others? Do we take this and say, okay, if there are issues, can I remember that so that when I'm in a position of authority, when I'm running an organization, these are the things that I shall do because I remembered the lessons from the past, right? So these are the things that when I talk about learning from experience, every job, it's not necessarily a technical part that you need to learn. It's about the human, it's about how you organize, it's about how you treat other people with dignity, it's about the lessons that you have learned and say, this is a bit more difficult for some people. So in my career, I've always put premium on people who needed to take time off. It could be a mother who just had 2 kids and she's off for 6 years, but I waited for her to come back. She didn't come back to an old job, she came back to a different job where she's performing very, very well. I've also got a guy who had a medical problem. Again, we held his hands. And when he came back, he was a superb guy who went around turning around companies. So I think accepting that people at every point in their career or in their life having to have a different priority for that time and reaching out to help them, I think that's very important. But when you come to yourself, particularly for the young ones, particularly if you're married and you have kids, accept that, do accept the point that you must make the trade-off and be comfortable with that trade-off. And once you make that trade-off, don't blame anybody else.
Words of wisdom and experience indeed. Now let's turn to a different question, which I think is quite interesting. So we know that there's a gender gap between men and women in engineering, and as the Dean Aaron has shared, NUS could be 50-50 overall, but in engineering it's 30-70 in terms of the gender differences. And I think for myself, who comes from mechanical engineering, we have improved from 5 students in 100, but we are still shy of the 20% mark. Okay, we've improved, but not yet. So do you think some of this gender gap actually comes from misinformation amongst the general public, in the sense that, for example, when we go out to schools, we would bring robots, and then, we say coding, video games, which naturally boys are more drawn towards. But as all of you have demonstrated, engineering is a lot more than just, hardcore technology, hardware, and, coding in particular. So do you have other ways you think that you might demonstrate the diversity of engineering and the versatility of engineering, perhaps? I know, yes, it's a very big question. Yeah, but I know it's we need to get the education minister here. But any thoughts?
My first thought was, why are we particularly concerned about that split and the numbers associated with it? What's the logic behind that, right? Because in the end, we all know, and some of us have demonstrated it, not all of us who have an engineering degree end up in engineering jobs. We simply take the know-how, the experience, the skills that we've built up, and then apply it in all kinds of environment and situations. So I think, understanding that, well, particularly these days, most of us need a whole variety of experiences, a whole variety of skills, both hard skills, softer skills, all of that, in order to contribute and have fun at what we do and to lead and, all the stuff that we want to be successful at, would suggest that, the numbers that we talk about and that we're sometimes so consumed with is really just a starting point. And you've got to look beyond engineering, right? So, for example, at the NUS level, what do those numbers look like, right? Because you do have schools where there are more females than males.
Like accountancy. Like accountancy.
Yeah, like accountancy. Yeah. So I think once we accept that, we're going to have to keep learning. We're going to have to build that broad range of skills, that continuous learning. Then really, to me, where you start is just where you start.
I think I really appreciate that response because, as the Dean has mentioned in his opening remarks, that's exactly where we are headed in NUS and in engineering as well. So less focus on the very, how do you calculate the fluid flow of something, but to bring across a range of interdisciplinary skills. And I think, through all your sharing today, it's become very clear to us that, understanding other aspects of on the job and other people, especially people and other areas is very important. I think that gives us a lot of confidence to push ahead with our new curriculum on interdisciplinary learning. And Ms. Wan, yes, you have
Yes,
something to say.
maybe I want to share something is that in my business of doing a design of automation and such business, actually we realized, okay, the whole business that we need engineers in the hardcore design engineering and with science people, science background, to do the technology, to convert the technology into design and products. But in our industry and in our companies, we need a lot of people in procurement, in sales, in even looking at how to manage the finance and accounts. But these people cannot be directly from the school of accounting and all that. They have to have engineering background. Even the procurement guys, they need to have engineering background, because if you don't understand the business of what we are doing, which is, I would say, pretty hardcore engineering, then you do not understand how to buy the right components, how to buy the right software. And even if you are in the accounting department or the operations department, the project management department, there are a lot of engineering fundamentals that make a good manager. We in fact, in our traditional experience so far, we have to get people with engineering background, minimum polytechnic level, or even ITE level with some exposure, and they are better procurement person or better person looking at finance. I think if you look at the careers of some of the bigger companies, the engineering companies, I'm not surprised because I know a number of them. Their CFO actually is engineering background. Okay? Because of that, they can understand how to manage the finances, how to judge investments, because it's engineering, technical investments. So all these areas actually is the fundamental for them before they go into this particular discipline of finance or even the business kind of stuff. So I think this thing is, I will encourage, engineering is really a fundamental where you can learn a lot of different understanding of the future world. Things are happening. All the companies, if companies are selling new products, new technology, especially this sector, we find it very difficult to have a person from pure non-engineering to get into our different aspects of our operations. So I would say this is one point. So as an engineering school, whatever you learn can be coding, can be such things, but whether you become in your job to really use it is one issue, because especially I remember my lecturers then in engineering school told us, now you learn this for computing, for trend or something, it will change, right? So just like in semicon, every 3-5 years, things will change. So whatever you learn in school, by the time you graduate, it may not be useful, but you learn the fundamentals like flow chart, stuff like that, right? These are fundamentals that you can make use of later in the industry that you go into. And even if you are buying software, you can understand when the salesman tries to explain to you, what is mine different from the other brand. So these are all the different things in engineering school that can benefit the graduate, whichever sector they go into. So I think we should not be fixated that what you learn now, you will go out to be that job. The job scenario is really changing.
Yes, thank you. So with that last insight from Ms. Wan, I know we can, go on and discuss this forever, but unfortunately, our time has come to an end and we need to close our panel discussion. We would like to thank our panelists for sharing, your really pearls of wisdom with all of us, and it has really been a very enriching and fruitful experience for the audience. So please join me in giving our panel a huge round of applause. And ladies, please stay. We're going to invite our Dean, Dean Aaron, to come and present tokens of appreciation to all our panelists and speakers today. Yes, so... So bear with us now, and we'll try not to break our tokens. Yeah. So I think from here, or is it from the back? From that side. This bump, elbow bump. So thank you very much, Dean Aaron, as well as the ladies. You can take your seats. Thank you. I now invite the Director of NUS Engineering's Office of Alumni Relations and Development, Associate Professor Daniel Chua, to give a few closing remarks. Daniel?
All right. Okay. Thank you, our guest of honor, Mr. Masagos, our distinguished alumni, Ms. Ho, Ms. Au, Ms. Wan, and Ms. Eng, once again for your time in gracing this event. I believe the insights you have shared have inspired many of us here and helped to reimagine the role of women in engineering. Indeed, I am proud to see what some of our engineering women alumni have achieved. I am also appreciative of the show of force by our most distinguished engineering alumni today, sharing their experiences with our alumni and future alumni-to-be. Certainly, there are many takeaways for our students and alumni gathered here and online. I believe the insights gained are not only inspiring, but will also help to illuminate their paths as they consider many possible opportunities they can take going forward. Among the audience, we have also many of our young alumni who are making big strides in their careers and leaving their mark in the world. I hope this sharing session will continue to encourage, inspire, and propel you to achieve greater feats in the future. NUS Engineering looks forward to greater milestones in affirming the accomplishment and potential our alumni have in engineering and beyond. As we have come to the end of our event today, I will like to thank every one of you, audiences live and online, for joining us. We hope to see you again at future NUS Engineering alumni events. Thank you and have a good evening. Thank you.